Before we kick off, I just want to say thank you to Zero for hosting us tonight. Thanks for the space and the food and drinks. It's really great to be here for our first meetup of 2025. And for today, what I kind of wanted to do was do a bit of a look ahead. Hence the title of the panel being Digital Accessibility the Next 10 Years. And the way to do these sort of things is always with a panel, in my opinion. So what I'll do is invite the panelists down. We'll start off with Briar Harte. We've got Aaron Cameron. Mel O'Brien. And Sarah Pulis. Thank you all very much for agreeing to be part of this tonight. I know some of you I roped in, so thank you very much. And I think we're ready to kick off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask a question. Bobby's going to hand out the mics first of all. Yep.
Please share.
Okay, so I think I'm gonna start off with a bit of a look ahead, and as we look ahead to the next decade, what do you think will be the biggest changes in digital accessibility? Who wants to kick it off? I did. Oh no.
All right, so I'm going to jump in the deep end. Digital accessibility, what's going to look like over the next 10 years? AI is going to be the biggest changer, definitely. So for me, I like the way we interact with the internet and kind of all technology is through the internet nowadays, websites, apps, everything. What is the future when actually we're interacting with the world via AI, ChatGPT? So even looking around the room at the moment, maybe raise your hand if you use, say, ChatGPT or any kind of AI assistant every day. Yeah, okay. We've got more than half the room, I'd say, using it every day. Imagine if you're actually going, hey, book my flights. Hey, buy me a new plan, or can you do a bank transaction, blah, blah, blah. Shop for me. I think that's going to be a really interesting future where we're perhaps less interacting with different websites, but our AI is actually going out and doing those things for us. And I'll stop there before I keep rambling.
I mean, obviously AI is going to be there. I think that digital accessibility will become hygiene in digital tools the same as privacy and security. Like that's just it. It has to be there because we will be using it, and people that don't need it will be using it because it's habitual. And so I think it will just become a part of how things have to be built. And we're in this uncomfortable maturity step where we're probably fighting for budget and trying to convince people why and giving them stats and all this stuff. But it's going to be like privacy and security. We're just going to have to do it, and you're not going to get to trade it off.
Mel, Sarah, thoughts? Oh. Technical difficulties. Hold on, I'll pass you this one.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. So what's on my mind at the moment is the current political landscape, and I actually think we're going to have to use an annoying corporate buzzword, but pivot and focus on the commercial and economic benefits of accessibility if we're going to survive.
AI is going to be the topic everyone talks about, but I wonder whether it's a change or that is the trust we put in technology. So I had to say, Briar, I'm not sure about the accessibility will become ubiquitous. I actually, in reflecting on preparing for this panel, I was thinking back to the start of the web when the most well known probably in our industry comment was, the Tim Berners-Lee, the power of the web is in its universality. And then what happened? We ran off and we built technologies that were not inclusive. And I think, it's probably not the biggest change, but it's going to be both the biggest challenge, but the same challenges we've always had, which is how do we ensure that these new technologies don't just run off a path that leads to exclusion.
So I kind of love that AI has come up because it gives me a great segue into the next question I was going to ask anyway, which starts with AI is everywhere and shaping the future of the digital landscape. How do you see AI enhancing or hindering accessibility? And I want to throw this one to Mel to start with.
No warm up. I think about things like that, how it can help my team. So, in their everyday work, things like being able to use it for writing alt text and descriptive images and doing transcripts and stuff like that. So it's going to make their lives a little bit easier. And then I think to the future, if it can help us by reading VPATs and summarizing things. So I think there are definitely some benefits that I'm looking forward to with AI.
Aaron?
I'll try not to make it, but yeah, definitely. Like, there's a lot of benefits, and I think I'd like to say they're very obvious, but maybe not to everyone they would be. But AI really enables a lot of, I guess, capabilities that haven't really existed before. You can kind of almost think about AI, especially AI like chatbot agents, for example. They're like another form of assistive tech. They're less like a website and much more like perhaps a keyboard, or are they? There's kind of a dual function to what a chatbot is. Both it can get information for you, but it's also an input method as well. It's a combination of like a website plus the input peripheral. So it's kind of an assistive tech. So yeah, it's definitely critical, making sure that chatbot software and interaction itself is really accessible, whether that's through voice communication or any other method that is coming out of it. Obviously, at the moment, we're getting even video recognition very quickly. Not long before we would have universal, say, Auslan comprehension from video directly into chatbot. So you'd be able to input directly through Auslan, not just voice, not just text. But getting into what you were saying before about the future scary side of things when it comes to almost, I can't remember the way you phrase it, but with the standard side of things, it's really, there's a risk. So the other side of it, I see it as, we'll find out in 10 years, whether all the inherent systemic biases that are already in all these systems and models that we have finally come to surface, where, hey, build me a website. Great. I actually spun up a website with, I was playing with Google's AI Studio the other week that was just released and just thought I'd give it a go. So I asked it to build me a quick little simple web app. It span out all the code. So I spun up, here's the script file, here's the HTML file, here's the CSS file, copy and paste. As it did, I had a website that was interactive, and then just started continuing through this little mini project I was doing. The code wasn't exactly accessible because the models that underpin at least the current generation of all AI agents, they're built on an internet that is already inherently inaccessible. So if we look at the internet, let's just arbitrarily say 99% of websites are inaccessible. Well, actually, that means that 99% of the code or standards that come out of our chatbots are also going to bring forward that biases, unless we then go and try and actually build those models. But fast forward 10 years, it might be too late. ChatGPT is already everywhere, open source. Everyone's already building all their other tools, or all of Microsoft's Copilot software is built on the same ChatGPT models. Anyway.
So agree. Definitely, like there's going to be things that are a hindrance and things that are sort of enhancing that. What I find it to be really useful is people fall asleep when you go and talk to them about the Disability Discrimination Act and WCAG and all this stuff. Like it doesn't motivate anyone to do anything. But when you start to talk about like, hey, we can do this innovative stuff with AI and we can, here's all the different ways in which we can integrate that, you get more energy and more discretionary effort from your stakeholders to go and build stuff. And so I'm finding that to be a really powerful conversation to sort of galvanize, like, people want to do cool shit that goes on their CV. Oh, I did swear. I told you what happened. They want to do cool shit that's going to go on their CV. Remember when the solution to everything was an app? So you could say you built an app and it was on your CV. Same thing. So great. If that's where you want to go, I'm going to give you topics to do with accessibility and disability that is going to galvanize that. And we can hopefully build the 1%, 2% more examples that are accessible.
So just quickly to the Zero people, I think there's a couple people stuck downstairs. But I guess, so the conversation for the most part so far has been on the predominantly positive bits of AI and the, I guess, potential sort of good things that can come out of it. But is there anything that any of you or all of you are particularly concerned about?
It's ableist as shit. No, it really is. Like, I write a newsletter on LinkedIn, and I have a tendency to write very, very long, complicated sentences. I talk a lot. And so it helps me to refine my point. But I have to constantly remind, say, ChatGPT to use the social model or human rights model of disability. Or like I was looking at, I was writing an article about psychosocial hazards. And if you call someone neurosparkly or neurodull, right? Could you go around and call someone who's neurotypical neurodull? What would happen in the context of psychosocial hazards? ChatGPT says to me, well, if you call someone neurodull, it's going to upset team dynamics. It's going to hurt someone's feeling. You're probably in breach of psychosocial hazards legislation, right? What if I call someone neurosparkly? You'll probably be in breach of psychosocial hazards. Hang on, won't that person maybe be a bit offended? Maybe won't that person also have their feelings hurt? Oh yeah, I guess so. This is literally the conversation I'm having with ChatGPT. Oh yes, I guess they probably could also have, like, it doesn't even recognize that someone who's neurodivergent could have their feelings hurt by having that statement made. Wild. Like, we have to constantly teach it. And so it's ableist as shit is my point.
I think for me also, Aaron, you mentioned about, and Briar as well, you know, the inherent, the data that it's being trained on, and that often that data is starting out inherently biased, you know, in some way. But the other part for me is not about the technology, but about the ethical frameworks that we need to put around this technology. To sort of guardrail, or and in some ways, you know, it's still us as humans potentially making that decision of how to use it and what to do with it. And I need to be the person who brings up the overlays here, where, you know, they're probably the early form of using AI to, you know, fix website accessibility. But we know that A, they can't do it all. B, it's often technical solutions. It's not about the usability. But C, the companies that are selling those overlays, it is about, they're great marketers. They're out there saying, look at us, you know, they're preying on our fears of, particularly maybe not so much here, but in the US, they're preying on our fears of being sued and this being the silver bullet. All of that has got nothing to do with the technology. It's all got to do with how we as humans are using that technology. And if we don't have then the ethical frameworks around, that's a small example, but, you know, other examples where we get into healthcare and wearables and you know, other sort of almost life critical areas, then yeah, it doesn't matter what the technology does for us. It's all about how we use it.
I was just going to add about the biases point to do with employment. I think, carrying on from your point about ableism, that's a real concern of mine, that, you know, it's been spruiked big time for HR and speed and being able to crawl through people's CVs and stuff like that and churn out who the best candidates are. And I think we all know what that will lead to, given how the machines are trained, with what data.
Yeah, and even on that, I'm thinking one of the biggest limitations of any kind of AI is its input. So if you're doing a standard text-based input, you're writing a sentence. You're saying, hey, I want to know the way you're phrasing that, the words you're using, the tone, there's so many nuance to how we communicate, especially even just via text, let alone non-verbal communication. But that seeds biases already into the response you might get back from it. Oh, don't you think that, okay, it's probably going to agree with you with the answer. Now, if someone's coming in, perhaps, to be blunt, ignorant about accessibility and, hey, I need to blah, 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 build some governance frameworks around accessibility. However they ask that, whether it's people with disability, disabled people, or some other phrasing that they might choose to use, can definitely bias the kind of content that comes back out of it. And I definitely lost my train of thought. But
I'll save you. I was just going to add a point about overlays. So I did get my hopes up that the word was out and everybody knew, and the fines were coming and people were getting penalised. But when you're getting penalised 1 million, but you're selling your company for $1 billion, where's the incentive to stop using it and stop doing this?
Have you picked up your train of thought yet? No?
oh, train of thought's gone. It's there somewhere, but it was something.
All right.
Anyway, we'll come back to it. It'll come into AI. Is going to
So so we've talked a bit about AI, which I think is the kind of big thing in tech at the moment. But the other, I guess, thing I want to ask you all about is things like AR and VR and wearables are becoming more and more mainstream at the moment. And I guess the question is, how do we ensure that these products and services are designed with accessibility and inclusivity in mind?
I have a story, if you're happy for me to start. So I actually did an advisory role with a company who was building a VR AR game through Quest 3 on the Meta device. And I think that was a good opener for having accessibility, guidance and advice and consideration from inception. So we had a good discussion, and it forced me to have to think about how this is going to work, how I'm going to use the tools that I have, like inclusive design and WCAG, and overlay that and what I know over this new technology, which I have only used once, and it was a pretty poor experience. So, but I suppose my answer is engagement.
Yeah, and even on that as well, I've had the unfortunate privilege of seeing a lot of, say, startup technologies, amazing devices that will, say, cure disability. And there's a lot of sarcasm in the way I phrase that. It's the ideas of, wow, all this amazing technology that AI will help to enable. It can come across as extremely ableist to have these technologies that are going to fix the world. And that side of, I'm not looking forward to seeing that, I don't know, over and over in the future. So when it comes to wearables, but I think we will start to see an influx of that kind of technology in that regard.
So I'm quite a laggard. I'm definitely not someone that I'm definitely not an early adopter of things like this. So for me, when I think about these topics, I think about where I'm in control, where I've got some control within my work. So in my last job, they were looking at bringing like the headsets in to do training, and I was like, this is terrible for people with disabilities. Like, this is not going to work for the ubiquitous training that you're hoping to make more engaging. And so I think to your first point, Mel, I feel like I can influence it by making it not commercial. I'm not going to support the purchase of it until it is able to be used by everyone, or people and culture is prepared to have alternative ways to do that training. And so my life before customer experience and accessibility inclusion was in procurement. So maybe it's like when you got a hammer, everything looks like a nail. But I think we can influence that by, it's too late, it's being developed, it's already in there, but don't bring it into the business if it's not fit for purpose for the people you were there to serve. And same with the overlays and everything. Wait until like it's ready for everyone.
Can I ask you a question?
Go.
What do you do when the business says, but it's just a pilot and we're just trialing it?
What do I do? So one, I flood them with the feedback from the people who it's not going to work for. So my background is not in design, tech, development, anything like that. It's in research. And so I will mobilize communities of people to provide the feedback on the issues, and then structure it in a way that's like, we need to do research in a way that's safe and robust for the decisions that are being made, and then present the consequences. So if you choose to do this, you will need manual workarounds for 20% of your workforce because it is not suitable for A, B, C, D. And if you're prepared to fund that, like, you just give them the trade-off. So flood them with that feedback by making it safe for, primarily I've been working with people with disabilities, but any type of protected attribute in the areas of discrimination, like finding safe ways for them to provide that feedback to make sure that you just need to surface the consequences of the business decision. People can't use it. You're going to need to do manual workarounds in order to remain compliant. And they hate that.
For AR and VR in particular, I also wonder whether it is thinking about it as just and Aaron, before with AI, you mentioned as input-output methods, not seeing AR and VR as the solution. We are investing in AR for this. AR or VR might actually be a great way for some people to learn or experience things, but it's not the only way that individuals will learn and experience things. So seeing it more as, just another method that people can choose, and actually looking at, the preferences of the individual and then offering them different ways, which could include AR and VR, then we're not seeing it as the only way, and potentially trying to, when I say shoehorn and make it inclusive, I'm not saying that there's not going to be times, and Mel, your experience of thinking about how do we do this, but also recognizing I'm actually thinking of my partner who is very motion sensitive, and I know anytime he puts one of these on, he's like, oh my gosh, I feel sick, straight away. I'm not sure if we can ever overcome that or not, or if that's just inherently a vestibular issue that the headset is just not the way that is great for him to, have information delivered to him or have an experience, and that's okay.
Aaron, I think you said something before where you said some of this tech kind of sets out to fix disability. And I think for me, that's one of the big things, right? Because I say to people all the time, right, this is my normal, so there's nothing to fix. Like, everyone else is different. And I think until the people in these startups, the people building this tech, actually accept that people are different and there's nothing to fix, there's just problems in terms of like the way technology works to solve, I think that's going to be a bit of a problem for us.
I think key to that, disability is not a problem. Accessibility is the key problem that we all here should be solving. Ignore disability in the nicest possible way. It's something that we should never try to fix, because accessibility is always where everything comes back to, and inclusion and all the other permutations of that, but not disability itself. It's probably goes back to one of the points we were saying before around wearables and AR and VR. I'll give you the very short version of a long debate I had with my partner on the walk to the chemist the other night. It was quite a fun discussion. But you might have started to notice online, if you're doing a Google search or just browsing around, there is a hell of a lot of AI generated content slop online that's really bad quality. It's just a page full of ads and takes ages to actually get to what you're after. And you get the vibe that, hey, this is just an AI generated page. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I was making the case to my partner that, look, 99% of the internet is going to be AI generated slop. It's going to be AI agents, our ChatGPTs, crawling through AI generated slop to find the other maybe AI agent or the other little bit of content. How is ChatGPT going to get its content? The whole internet is going to become this homogenous mass of content that's all being created from all these machine learning models. It's pretty dystopian thinking about it like that. But then how do you even trust what you're reading when, not to talk about politics, the content that could be online, like what do you even trust is reputable when everything is being generated? Who generated? Is it a reputable source? How do you know if that's reputable? How do you corroborate that? What if that's also a generated source? So the internet will, in my opinion, start becoming less trustworthy. So I feel that people will start coming offline a bit more, trying to use AR, VR, other tech, other communities, whether it's a digital community or otherwise, that the AI is really just another form of engagement and communication I see in the future, particularly, looking at the way tech will, I think, accelerate through its adoption.
That got dark quite quickly, didn't it?
Did it get dark?
I
As
think
a
it got dark.
raging extrovert, I'm very excited we're going to spend more time together and we're going to spend less time online. I just want to add to that though, like, if you were having these panel discussions when the printing press was invented, what conversations were they having? What fears were they having? Because people lost control of the narrative and the information was put in the hands of people. And I don't disagree with what you're saying. Like, it's just going to be a black hole bin fire of information in there. But what were they grappling with, and what can we learn from that? Because, like, Meta wants to remove fact checking. Sorry, they are removing fact checking. But isn't that just them saying we're the paper, not the printing press? So who's going to be the printing press? And you had, editorial standards. You had all of these things evolve. We're going to evolve. And I think it's going to be, I don't know the answer because I haven't done a hyper focus on it yet, but I'm sure it's going to be very similar in terms of humans' connection and the information we're sharing. And it's going to be ugly in the middle. Can I say that? But
All right.
crying.
So I want to move from the dark into the light a bit more here. What are the things you're all most optimistic about for accessibility in the next 10 years?
I'll try and bring some levity.
We missed that. What was that?
I'll try and bring some levity. I have another story to tell. So a couple of weeks ago, my little niece told me how she was at school and she has dyslexia, and she was given a worksheet, and it was actually a maths worksheet, but it was all in written words. Even the questions were like, write this out, like 2,350. So it's really challenging for her. And I thought, what can I do to help? And I found this OCR pen. It's called a C pen that scans the words for her. If you've not heard of it, it's amazing. But it's like quite expensive. So I wanted to know if we could get her a trial, and it's like $500. So it does price some people out of the market, unfortunately. But they do offer it through the school. They got in contact with her school and teed it up so she could get it. And then, I mean, look, this isn't a happy ending full stop because she's still going through challenges and learning how to read. But she said everybody else in the class was just there doing the activity sheet, and she looked around and was like, why can't I do it? Like, what's wrong with me? But she came back a week after she got the C pen, explaining how she went up to the top of the class and told her whole class what it was, and that she had dyslexia and what that meant. And now I just feel like she's empowered by having the tools. So it's great to see like primary school age kids embracing technology and having tools and like sharing it and being excited about it. So positivity.
Nice one.
You're welcome. Something positive?
I think, look, it's not all bad. Mel, actually, my best friend's husband's family has a business. I'm just going to plug it. It's called Rainbow Reading, where they have developed these pens, like what you're talking about. And those pens will scan the pages of the books, and the books have got tiny QR codes that you can't see, right? And so they've been doing remedial reading since like I was a kid, this company. But the technology innovation they've managed to do there is that my daughter is 4. She can do pen book reading by herself. She puts the pen there, it reads the whole sentence. She doesn't know one of the words, she puts it on top of it. And they've even developed it to the point where you can record a family member reading that book and then the kids learning it with the parent's voice, the grandparent's voice, whoever's. Like, it's really cool things that are also building connection. So I think like I've loved watching the evolution of that. I I'm going to go dark to go positive for a second. There are so many people that want to do the right thing by all types of minorities, and we're talking mainly about disability here, but accessibility benefits so many others. And while it might be unpopular to be leaning into what we've generally called D&I, which has been about employment targets and engagement and more of an employment setting, there are still people who want to do that within your organization, and maybe for whatever reason they don't feel like they can lean into the employee resource groups that were there, or they don't feel like they can lean in there, but give them a channel to do this cool stuff, galvanize them over where we are in digital accessibility and the innovations that are possible, and take the energy into a place where they, for whatever reason, don't feel like they can publicly talk about these things, because that, you know, that is happening. Some people feel that way. Bring that energy into what we're doing. People still want to do this. People with disabilities, everybody knows someone. So I think we can use the energy that's there, that's being lost in one area, into our areas and make it fun. Was that dark and positive?
That was dark and positive. That worked out pretty
I
well.
did say that.
Yeah.
Not so much technology, but actually picking up on your stories. And I got to say, don't have kids, so can't speak about, you know, the education system. But what I've been wondering for a while is that I think in particular neurodivergent students and how it is becoming, I believe, that's why I said don't have kids, speaking secondhand, but it's becoming more normalized. And what I'm interested in is, and that technology, you know, that you have that technology, you're bringing that technology along with you. And what I'm interested in to see is also then how that changes as these sort of students get older and, you know, into adulthood. How is that going to change society and the way we see disability, and also the workplace, the employment, you know, side of things as well? I'm hopeful for that. You know, personally, I would love to see what that change is going to be like.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Anyone who's ever worked with me or maybe spoken to me for 5 minutes or put me up on a panel will appreciate the depths of my ADHD. I'm extremely scattered. So the technology of what AI is doing, the capabilities it's brought to me in my life is exactly that. And it's only going to get better from here. The kind of tools it will enable for, like, so I work at Belong, which is part of the big Telstra mothership. We're like a sub-brand within the same company. That means we get all the benefits of being at Telstra, which includes Telstra taking on Copilot. Now, I believe it's this massive beta program that maybe isn't rolled out to maybe any other organization in Australia yet. What that means is I get to play with all the new tools, including going, hey, do I have any outstanding tasks from last week? And it goes through all of my teams, all of my emails, everything within the Microsoft environment. It goes, yeah, cool. You got an outstanding thing you promised to send Kobe last week. Okay, I'll do that. It's really handy. Things like meetings, just doing the auto meeting notes. That is an absolute lifesaver. I was always, some of my old team members are here, and knowing that I would always be frantically typing away meeting notes, because once the meeting's done, I'm into my next meeting and I've forgotten everything that happened in the last meeting. This kind of tech is so amazing that the next generation, I can't imagine how much even better it's going to be. Maybe the kids in the classroom will have to shut up their assistant that is sitting there, I don't know, projected onto the table next to them, helping them and taking notes for them, because they don't need to take notes anymore. I don't know. I
just want to talk about how much I'm not going to swear. Bleep, 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 love Copilot. No, but I'm going to take it back to the comment about flooding the feedback loops with what you're wanting. So we were doing a pilot for Copilot, and I said, well, we need to get people with disabilities in there. We set up 10 different people with different types of disabilities, and it was the most life-changing thing. Like, you're talking about the difference between disabilities and access needs, right? We had a manager who had Parkinson's that was deteriorating to the point that there were only certain periods of the day that they could use their hands. So with Copilot, they could set it up. They could set up these prompts that would say, please, I've got a team meeting at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday. all of the key points that I need to make the team aware of. They could use it to do these things. And then we were in a group, and then they were sharing that with someone that had just been diagnosed with osteoarthritis. And so they were at the peak of pain because they were learning to manage it. And then we had people who were deaf and ADHD sharing how they were using it, and they had the same thing. I can come into the office the required numbers of days because of the way in which Copilot is helping me manage my concentration. And it was amazing. So then we could go back to people and culture and say, we have people who are able to do their jobs, stay and work longer, require less accommodations, adhere to the policies that you're asking to. Amazing. Right? I then changed jobs and they didn't have it, and I feel like I'd lost half my brain because I was so used to using it. But to tie that to your point, Sarah, my favorite people are the graduates, right? So the kids are getting all the support they need. I've got dyslexic siblings, ADHD siblings, autistic siblings. I joke that I'm bilingual because I grew up with all of them. Maybe I'm just the least neurodivergent of all of them. And so they go through school and they get all this help, and they get to university or higher education and they expect it, right? And then they get all the accommodations in higher education, then they get to work and they expect it. They expect it. It's so cool. They expect it. I have verbal processing delays, and so I will not take instructions verbally. You need to write them down. And then you have executives being like, we can't have this grad. We can't have this grad. This grad will not take verbal instructions. And I'm like, well, actually, if you need to give verbal instructions, you can do that. You can record it. You can get the transcript in Copilot. They can read it and everybody wins. I love the grads so much because they set a whole new standard for what you should expect, and they will tell you what universities have done. Do they have some unrealistic expectations? Yes, of course. Of course. And I'm sure I did 15 years ago too. But it's amazing to see that come through. And now you've got people like Bill Shorten as a chancellor of a university. He's been pretty solid in his advocacy for disability across quite a few decades. You can love or hate what he's been doing with the NDIS. That's just going to strengthen it. So I think it's going to be great, like what they're coming through with.
I'm going to pick up on one point. So a story that I heard at a human rights and technology panel has really, really stuck with me. And this is both really, really exciting and also then I'm going to go dark. But it stuck with me because the true story was that there was a person who was having multiple seizures a day. And this person actually elected to have an implant which could actually detect when a seizure was coming so that it could alert her to it, and she could take medication, which significantly reduced the number of seizures that she was having within a day. The interesting thing was, though, because a lot of these technologies are so new and there's so many startups out there that are dabbling in these technologies, in this particular case, the company went bust. And so this person was left with this decision about, do they leave a piece of technology in their body that no longer had any sort of support because it went through, this company and this company wasn't there? Or do they remove it and essentially, go back to having so many seizures a day that, that their life was significantly impacted? And so on one hand, it's really exciting when I think about what this technology could do for this individual and what it might be able to do for others. And I'm coming back to that concept of fix, and really, in this case, it was a medical condition where technology could help that medical condition and give this person just such a more significant quality of life. But in reflecting, as we are entering this period of technology, it's potentially going to be someone like a person like this who's an early adopter, who does take that risk of maybe, trying something because they feel like they need that because their life is so difficult. So in some ways, this is a vulnerable person. And, then we've got these structures around where, companies are, going out of business and that kind of thing. And so we'll probably get past that. But right now, for me, it's like both terribly exciting, but an incredible risk for, that individuals could choose to take. But are there things that we can actually do to help in these scenarios?
Yeah, definitely. I know we're on the happy question, but I think
started there.
Sorry, I mean,
So I got this.
like one of my biggest concerns, fears, acknowledgements is that I'm really privileged to be able to pay for ChatGPT and others. Not everyone can, let alone pay for any AI assistant, let alone get access to one. Thinking about when I was a kid, I grew up in the country. We didn't have actually even dial-up back then. I got it at school and it was amazing. Came to the big smoke and oh my God, I had ADSL, really fast internet. It was amazing back in the day. But that enabled so much for me and made, like, growing up in the country, going to school, it was a pretty big contrast. Suddenly getting online, being able to learn all this stuff. So there is definitely a huge risk, not only that the technology itself is leaving behind consideration of people with disability, let alone any marginalized group, but also that those groups actually might not even be able to benefit from using it or all the amazing things it gets. I don't know, there's the happy learning, silver lining is really that we're all here. We're here talking about accessibility, inclusion, diversity, equity, inclusion will always exist as a word. And pushing that as far as we can, because that's what we're about here as humans. We're not going to leave it to our AI overlords to dictate what is and what is not, what things will be. But yeah, so I think there's always got to be a human element. Eventually, I think the technologies will catch up, that things will be able to be done by the technology. But until then, we are the ones that actually need to be monitoring that as much as we can to make sure that the disadvantaged people who don't have access to this kind of technology are actually able to benefit from it as much as possible and not end up with this segregated society of people who have this tech and don't have it. We've seen that occur time and time again and occurs every day still.
Started off positive and went negative, and then so all right, so moving on from all of that, let's look to the future a bit more, and I want from each of you the one overlooked area of accessibility that you think has the biggest potential for impact in the next 10 years. Start with one.
Damn it, I was hoping.
I think the challenge. I'm going to talk because no one else wants to start this. So I work far more in the not necessarily accessibility but inclusion. And I use this analogy, like accessibility is grocery shopping and inclusion is sitting down for dinner. And you need to have a good recipe and you need to make sure that you've checked with all your guests if they have any dietary requirements and stuff like that. So I don't feel like I'm qualified to say what is the biggest thing in accessibility, but I think maybe it is that it is inclusive. Like you can have accessible things that add up to exclusion. And so I think for me, like, are the humans actually benefiting from this experience? Is it adding up to what we're trying to do? Because otherwise it's all of these bits of food that is inedible. Yeah.
Can I chime in? For me, I think about universities, and even if I go further back, high schools and primary schools, and their awareness about digital accessibility. I know certainly for me and for a lot of other people in this room, you probably had never heard of accessibility when you were growing up or at school or even at uni. And I often ask when we have grads through, what did you learn at uni about accessibility? And it's pretty poor. And that actually hasn't changed. And I make a point of asking the grads because I really want to see a change. And I've had conversation. I don't know if there's anyone in the room that works for a university. I'll just throw you the question out to the ring. But I have had conversations with folks who do work at universities, and it really is a struggle to get more than maybe a paragraph in one subject in one semester. So for me, that's the overlooked area.
Talking about overlooked, but personalization. I think that it's funny. 20 odd years ago, there was a thing called the GPII that basically talked about. Yes, Andrew, I know you were there. Andrew and I back in the day, and it essentially talked about that personalization, that I could go up to any sort of digital interface, and that digital interface would adapt for me. And granted, being 20 years ago, of course, that was kind of screen-based, not the, like what you're saying, Aaron, the, those different input-output methods and what have you. But I still feel like when we're looking at, designing solutions, we don't put enough emphasis on that element of personalization and individuals being able to, set their own preferences, that an interface does adapt to your needs at the time, that you could tell it, I would like, I sort of think about the non-screen interface and think about the cognitive load of, oral input. But, being able to actually say, I like my information delivered in this way, in short chunks, in this and that, and what have you. And for me, I think that's overlooked in the sense of we get a little fixated these days on making an interface that works for as many people as possible without actually realizing, or at least, considering that personalization part of things. And I do think the evolution of technology is going to make that much more realistic than, say, 20 years ago, when it was a nice concept, but we all went, never going to happen really now. But I actually think it is possible now, not just through a few little settings that you might put in a profile, but actually true personalization that, is a lot more fluid and a lot more ubiquitous within technology and the experiences that we have.
What was I thinking? Like, I missed the tail end of your point because I was trying to think what I was going to say, but
We'll be there.
Like it kind of touches on a little bit of the point I was saying earlier, and probably the tail end of that. In the future, imagining 10 years from now, if we're building websites still, assuming we are, like, who are we actually building them for? Are we building websites for AI bots to crawl and grab all the information? The information's got to come from somewhere. So if you have a business, you still need to have a website somewhere. But actually, we're still going to have people who go looking for that address, that link, and trying to find it. So there's still going to be, definitely as we would now, people go down the street, they still actually go into real shops physically. Same online, you still will have particular places you go to, but actually, I think we'll be designing digital experiences that are not necessarily for humans, but they are actually for bots to go get that information. Bots, as in my assistant. So when I talk a lot about assistants and AI agents, I'm not sure if anyone's had a actual play with, like, say, deep research with ChatGPT, brand new, kind of the last couple of weeks. My partner paid for it, which is really expensive, so that's great. I didn't have to. But essentially, I can say, hey, can you go research an example I was reading about when I first learned about this was, okay, imagine I'm going to Japan. Great. I'm going to spend 3 weeks. I only want to spend $100 a day as I travel around. I don't want to go near the touristy places. I want to go a cheap time of year, blah, 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 blah. Okay, it goes off and actually for a half hour or so, we'll go look at all these different websites. Oh, great, it's going to the travel site, getting all the prices there, finding some different accommodation in all these different cities. It's putting together an itinerary. It's got to work out where these places are on the map. Anyway, half hour later, it's gone across the whole internet looking for all these different things and worked out, look, here's your plan. Here's how much it's going to cost you each day. Here's the great food. We know you like great food. So here's what you'll be able to eat in each city we recommend, blah, blah, blah. Here's the accommodation. Here's where you can book in each of these cities, blah, blah, blah. This is the kind of tool in the future where, hang on, that was a bot that just went and looked up those websites. I don't need to do that. I think it's going to be really interesting seeing how this technology evolves. And it's kind of like SEO. We're not optimizing our websites necessarily for Google anymore, but to be machine readable. And a machine readable site is an accessible site. That's the whole crux of it. So if we actually have a logical, well-structured site that actually makes sense, it's accessible. And that means it's, able to be read by AI as well.
Any more? No? All right. So I think we've had a really great discussion there. What I want to do before I sort of close the panel here is just ask for a final thought from everybody, a final positive thought from everybody. Accessibility and inclusion the next 10 years. So fast forward to 2035 and give us your thoughts, feelings, hopes, dreams, positivity.
I'll be out of a job. Is that positive enough?
That's the ultimate positive, isn't it? Yeah, thanks.
I think that the time that you spend learning about accessibility, learning about this stuff will not be lost on whatever you do in your career in 10 years' time, right? 10 years ago, I was doing like procurement transformation and doing tenders for Microsoft, like completely different stuff. But that still benefits me today in terms of my career. And so I think the time that you're investing today thinking about it or learning about it it's a skill set to understand what a group of people need and how to make something, work for a variety of people. I think it doesn't matter what's happening in 10 years. Right now, what you're learning will help you with whatever you're going to be doing in 10 years' time. So that's my positive spin on it.
Yeah, and jumping straight on that, like accessibility is fundamentally about communication. My background is actually linguistics. And so getting into accessibility through a bit of a route, I've always wanted to get in tech, but 11 years later now, it's still fundamentally about communication. It's about language. It's about taking information from one medium to another. I won't tangent. I was going to, but I won't. But really, that's what I think it will always be. So we're imagining 2035, we said. I think we're always going to be communicating, no matter what form of technology we have in the future. Whether I think by 2035, AI will help power automation, physical in the real world. It'll bring digital experiences actually physically into the real world. Robots, whatever they do end up looking like, often the cliche of AI, it's a robot. No, actually, robots are robots. AI is something different. AI is what we've got now. Well, getting there. So I think it's really going to be interesting by 2035. They're saying, actual AGI, actual intelligence, sentience, might already exist right now, but it's expected within the next 6 months. Doesn't mean we're all going to get to access it. It's going to be locked in some basement over in ChatGPT labs, OpenAI labs. But I think it's going to be really fascinating in the future, seeing this technology, how it influences our world and seeing how it evolves.
Yeah, that was pretty positive. I can, yeah.
Yeah, and I was going to dovetail on that with your point about communication. I think that's what I'm excited to see, and also increasing people's independence and how technology is going to do that. So,
A real example, sure. A real thing. I think what I hope for is no, that's a negative thing. Damn it. My brain is just gone. No, funnily enough, what I wanted to say is the excitement when we were talking about the pen, to help, someone read or that. Actually, that's what I hope for in 10 years' time. I think where we're at now is still such a hard slog often to, even get that inroad for someone to consider inclusion, to consider everyone. And, for me, if the technology does result in it moving away from, a separation, that kind of thing, to let's just get excited about this and let's just do it without having to have the hard sort of slog, the hard sell. That was where I started my negative, and then I worked out how to come around back to it. That's what I would love to do, is not have to, be sitting here going, what do you do in procurement when, someone goes, oh, but it's just a pilot, but instead we're like, yeah, it's a pilot. Oh my God, we don't have to worry about that. It's going to be fantastic.
I was thinking to riff on your point about being unemployed. I actually think that's, my people I've worked with for a long time have heard me say it countless times. My job is to make myself redundant. I want accessibility to be embedded in part of everything we do. Now, I don't think it's ever going to happen. I don't think accessibility is going to be a redundant function, but that's the goal. That's the dream. And I think if we get to the point where, hey, I'm out of a job, great. That is absolutely fantastic, because it means the job of accessibility is done. So I think that's a really exciting future to look forward to.
Or at least integrated. It's no longer a, something that is separate. It's like, it is just part of what we do. We don't have to think about it. We don't have to talk about it. We just talk, well, we do talk about it, but it's just in the context of everything else.
I'm going to jump on that too. I think I wanted to see everyone be upskilled enough to be able to do the basics. Like, I'm thinking of like the Cinefin model of chaos or something there. And so your accessibility and inclusion experts are precision instruments to come in where it's complicated and it's messy and you do need a person to think about it. But so there's two of us that are the inclusive design team in the context of nearly 200 designers. I need 198 other designers to understand enough about accessibility and inclusion that I am not telling them the same thing 198 times. But that we can be involved when it's really complex cases. And I think that is a really cool thing that's going to happen for us as a profession if we are still doing this in 10 years, is we're going to get some like really fun shit to do, because we've made sure everyone else knows how to do the basics. And I know the basics of privacy, but I don't know the really complicated stuff. So I've upskilled in other things so that those people can go and do the really complicated, messy stuff. The problems are going to be awesome.
Yeah, I'm gonna steal that one, I think, Briar, because you said something earlier, and I 100% agree with the grad side of things, right? For me, the next 10 years, I'm like you, I love the grads. I love looking at the next generation of accessibility people, and it's going to be a completely different role to what it is today. And I think, like you said, they're going to be the precision instruments, not referring to people as instruments, but in that context. So I think that's what, in my mind, we've got to look forward to from a, I guess, career path perspective in the next 10 years. And I'm going to call it there. Thank you very much to our panel members. Thank you very much again to Xero for sponsoring this evening. Thank you for the food and drinks and the venue.